NLP, NLG, intent, entities? This is the stuff that makes chatbot tech exciting. We've talked a lot about the conversation design and chatbot personality in this podcast series. Today, we're looking behind the UI at the AI. Buckle up. Welcome to the Conversologist Podcast, where we talk about the art and science of conversation in the digital space. We know that technology can be a powerful enabler in the customer journey, from marketing to customer service, but communication and emotional connection still need to be at the core. I'm your host, Jam Mayer, and I invite you to converse with us. This is episode 13, a beginner's guide to AI chatbots. Today, I'm sharing with you highlights from a webinar I did earlier this year with Andy Darmani, founder of New Zealand-based AI solutions company ako.ai, or simply Ako. We're digging this time into the next level of chatbot development and asking some questions around AI, voice bots, and even digital humans. Andy is our tech partner in developing enterprise-level chatbots, and we've worked on a couple of projects already where we did the conversation writing and personality of their clients' chatbots. I tell you, this guy is awesome. He comes from a background as a solutions architect. His specialty was infrastructure with qualifications in computer science and technology, as well as business. Very smart guy, don't you think? He's passionate and highly regarded for his vision and his ability to deliver practical and efficient solutions. Okay, that was quite the spiel, so let's get into it. Hi, Andy. Thank you for joining us.
Hey Jam, thanks for the lovely introduction. I definitely learned few things about myself today. Thank you for that. I am really excited to work alongside Jam. As you can guess from the name Conversologie, Jam does a lot of work in chatbots and conversation designs, and I am passionate about technology. So we together work on delivering some high performing chatbots. So we will get straight into it then.
Yes, definitely. So we have a few questions, and Andy, of course, is going to answer those questions. Okay, so Andy, let's start off with sort of the basics. What is actually an AI chatbot?
So if you look at basically all the different channels users interact with, we are all used to things like making a phone call, sending out emails, obviously chat on a website on likes of Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp. We use different interfaces. In last few years, we have also seen a lot of voice-enabled devices like of Alexa, Microsoft Cortana, Google Home, and a lot coming up like Samsung Bixby. So I guess for a peer-to-peer messaging, we obviously are used to these channels quite a lot. And with chatbots, what we are trying to do is provide a chatting experience. So, as a user, they are on Facebook Messenger, they want to interact with, let's say, a telecommunication company or a bank or an insurance company. And chatbots can obviously provide a consistent response and which can also engage and convert visitors into customers and leads. I guess chatbots are basically are trying to use technologies available like artificial intelligence to understand what customer is saying and provide an awesome response back to them. We cannot forget that now with technologies and use cases of IoT coming up, Internet of Things, we can start interacting with like of fridges in our house. I can tell my AC to switch on and off. I can switch on the light using voice command. So voice is coming back too in quite a big way, specifically because a lot of these things we are trying to talk to, like a washing machine, they don't have screens to send a message or type. Yeah, voice is growing.
So here's another question for you. There's a lot of acronyms going around. There's NLP, NLG, Luis, and LUIS. I don't even know if I pronounce it correct. Can you please help us understand a little bit more about all of these things? Yes.
I will try to explain it simply because actually it is simple. One aspect of the chatbot is providing the interface, which could be again Facebook Messenger, could be a chat running on your website, or with voice, it could be likes of Alexa's where you are talking to an Alexa, Cortana. So you interact with the chatbot using one of these channels. One important aspect is conversation design and channels, but the core of a chatbot, where all these acronyms come from, is actually the NLP platform, usually, which stands for Natural Language Processing. If you look at a chatbot, which is obviously trying to imitate what a human basically is capable of doing. So when two people have a conversation, somebody says, "What is the time today?" So the other person needs to understand the context in their brain and respond back. What NLP does, which is quite a big part of it, is trying to extract meaning out of utterance. So if somebody says, "Can I have espresso?" NLP can understand that and figure out what's happening within it. So what usually does is, if it is, "Can I have espresso?" usually a NLP engine will understand it and score it. So it will say, "I'm 90% confident this person is trying to ask for a coffee." It might also say that I am 40% confident that this person is asking for a tea. So it does this scoring, and then the highest scoring intent, in this case, this person is asking for a coffee, is picked up, and then the important information is basically extracted out of that phrase. So in this case, espresso is important. I know which coffee they want. I know they are asking for a coffee, and I also know which coffee they want. So the entity will be extracted, and then I can go ask them the next question: "Do you need any sugars?" Whereas if the person says, "Can I have a coffee?" I know this person is asking for a coffee, but they didn't tell me which coffee they want. So the next question the bot will ask is, "Which coffee can I get you?" So the two key elements are understanding the natural language, and the second big part of it is extracting the entities or the important information out of that particular phrase. It's usually not one question at a time. That's where context management comes in a chatbot, where I know I'm having this conversation in context of taking a coffee order. So I need to, as a chatbot, understand the context so that I can ask the right questions. And when person says one sugar, I know they're asking for one sugar for this coffee. So that's kind of the NLP, which has these different components. Then the other part is obviously to do anything in a business sense, if you like. There is always integration with business systems. So if as a chatbot I've taken a coffee order, obviously I need to pass it to the barista. So I might have to integrate with the point of sale system at the cafe, let's say. That's called the fulfillment. These acronyms are mostly around natural language processing, natural language generation. It is also called natural language understanding. The LUIS particularly is a Microsoft product which stands for Language Understanding Intelligence Service. This is one of the many services available where you pass a phrase, "Can I have espresso?" and it will return you back, "I'm 90% confident this is a coffee order." Now with the kind of technology development in this area, it has become so much easier to implement these chatbots because you don't have to build your NLP. So yeah, you need to know what it is, but there are NLP engines available as services from likes of Microsoft, IBM, and many others. Hope I didn't confuse you.
I couldn't have explained that better. it's I just wanted to move on to more around the user interface and stuff. Can you explain a little bit more about how
Yeah.
does the UI elements or user interface elements, as you've shown here, the responses, the buttons, how does
Yeah.
that work as well?
So look, probably this is the most simpler aspect of a chatbot, and this is also the one which, as a normal user, we see every day when interacting with chatbots. So, like when building a website, you need to figure out where to put an image, where to put a video, how you need to section your website. It's very similar to that. In a chatbot, there are only limited set of UI elements you can use, like buttons, multi-choice options. You can have links to external web pages. You can add images and videos. So this is the aspect where it is more to do with conversation design, where you need to figure out what elements I need to put where so that I can provide the best possible experience. So this is like the front end, and when user types something, the front end interface will send the message to likes of Luis and then try to figure out what to say next.
Got it. And that's what we help with Andy's team and stuff in terms of the front end.
This is, sorry, Jem, I just want to add, I said from technical aspect, this is simpler, but obviously I cannot do it. So this is most important aspect too, and this is where, building the chatbot personality and the actual conversation comes in. So I don't know how to do it, but this is important.
Yes, definitely. I totally agree. Before we move on to the next question, Andy, so is Luis, you did mention it is from Microsoft. The question is, what are some comparable services from other companies?
Sure. Microsoft has this solution called Louis. Actually, most of these companies did some acquisitions. So Microsoft acquired Louis. Google have a platform called Google Dialogflow, which is kind of competitive in that space. IBM got a solution called IBM Watson. AWS got a solution called AWS Lex, LEX, which was also acquired. And then there are many other companies who provide this solution as well, specifically to address a particular use case. So, just one example is a company called SoundHound, SOUND. SoundHound are building NLP engines specifically to be used in cars. So they are working for likes of BMW, Mercedes. So there are these niche companies in particular areas, but in general, yeah, Louis, Google Dialogflow, IBM Watson, and Amazon Lex are the ones you will come across most of the time.
Awesome. Okay, next question. What is machine learning? What does that actually mean? I've heard that you're supposed to train a chatbot. So a chatbot needs a gym like us human beings, right? So,
Yeah.
yep, if you can explain, please, Andy.
Sure. Look, this is the aspect which I don't want to say is easy, because this is what we do, and I tell everybody what I do is very complex. But in a very, very simple terms, okay, if some of you are familiar with, a normal kind of programming language or how the logics are written is in kind of context of if then else. So I say if distance is 5 kilometers, do Y. If distance is 10 kilometers, do Z, so on and so forth. So most of the technology or things we interact with today are driven by kind of if then else logic. With machine learning coming now, it's probably not just for chatbots, but it's having impact on number of other things like medicine and infrastructure, and it's impacting in a lot of areas. The core difference is, in a machine learning, you don't have to write things like if this happens, do next thing, if this happens, do something else. You build a model and then you train that model with some training data. So if I want to train a chatbot to answer my car rental questions, so I will train it to say, if somebody says when you want to pick the car and somebody responds back tomorrow, they can say tomorrow, they can say a date. I need to train with only like some training data, and then the model is supposed to learn itself and interpret everything else as well, which is around it. So that's where I said the kind of intent scoring comes in. So if I train a bot with 5 phrases, and then if somebody says that same thing in a different way, the machine learning model, which is natural language understanding in this case, is supposed to pick that up. So that's how a kind of machine learning works.
Hmm.
There are various models, but especially in natural language, again, you need to feed it with training data before you go live with the bot. You should try to put at least, 10, 20 phrases for each intent, and then it will pick the rest. And then obviously, you will see that when a bot is live and a lot of people are interacting with it, it will never be perfect from day one. You will always pick things that it didn't understand, and then you need to continue training. Say next time if somebody says this phrase, they mean this intent. You continuously train it, and over a period of, depending upon how many people are interacting with it, it will get better and better. So that's what we call chatbot training.
Awesome. So, making a chatbot more intelligent. Are we supposed to start getting scared now? Is this more? Is this a Terminator type of chatbot? Can you just, what are your thoughts on this one? Identification, extraction, and of course, validation.
Yes, so chatbots can do a lot, depends upon how much you train them to do. And they can self-learn as well, but it's still within the framework you train it on. So hopefully, if you train it with all the good things, it will do the same. But to make a chatbot intelligent, like if a bot will say, "How can I help you?" I would like to have a coffee, right? So what happens is people can respond back with things like, "I need a coffee," or "I need a cappuccino," or "I need a trim cappuccino." Somebody can also say, I need a cappuccino with one sugar. So, what you need to do is you need to train the bots to understand the intent and extract the right entities out of it. So, in this example, you have entities like coffee type, which could be cappuccino, flat white, espresso. You can have a milk type, regular, trim. You can have count of sugars, how many sugar that person wants. And then the bot needs to be intelligent enough to extract those entities, extract them from the phrase, and then validate that, if somebody says, I want Y sugars, you need to validate and say, sorry, tell me how many sugars you want. Y is not a number, something like that. So basically, you need to train the bot to pick up all these things and interact properly. So that's what it means by identification, extraction, and validation.
No, it makes perfect sense. I guess, and this is the same conversation I have with our clients as well on the conversation design and the personality of a chatbot. They think, oh, okay, just build a chatbot and that's it. But actually, it isn't. It continuously needs to be trained, as you mentioned earlier.
So basically, this once a bot is live, users are interacting with it. You need to have three stages always ongoing. One is Maya, how the bot is doing, how many people are interacting with it, are people following the path that they are supposed to. Then you can analyze, how many people are dropping off at which particular point in the conversation. And then the third important bit is based on all that data, you need to continuously optimize and retrain the bot. One point, you cannot leave a bot alone. So you have to continuously train and optimize it. Doesn't matter if it's in live for production for 1 year, 2 years, but you always need to be its side. You need to have proper KPIs for a bot. You need to monitor them and you need to make sure it achieves that KPIs, because if it is left alone, it will actually damage your brand rather than giving a better experience.
Exactly, and I couldn't agree more. And again, because you are interacting with human beings, we are such a complicated creature
Yeah.
with different personalities, etc. So it is a machine and we need to train it. Poor bots if we just leave them alone. Anyway, I'm going. Okay, let's go. Before we move on to the next topic, I know there are some technologies in the process around it, training data. How can you acquire good training data, especially if your use case is niche?
So there is no straight answer to that. If your use case is niche, then you need to come up with the training data. So what we usually do is, if we are implementing a chatbot, either text messaging or a voice bot in a, let's say, a telecommunication service provider, we will look at their logs from last 6 months, pick up all these conversations, and then use that as the training data for the bots. So the data will come from within the organization you are trying to implement it, or at least from within that industry vertical. But definitely, this is something you need to get from the historic conversation with your customers. In specific cases, let's say a hotel, you can reuse that data across hotels because most of the people ask questions in similar way. What is the checkout time? Do you have a cot if I'm bringing my baby? But when it comes to niche, you have to spend time building your own data, or again, getting it from historic conversations.
Yeah, so it's basically sort of starting from scratch in a way.
It's similar. So if I have to put in context of a human, if a new employees come and joins your organization and your organization is into some niche field, then obviously you need to spend a month training that employee before they can be productive. So if you're bringing a chatbot in, you need to spend your month, maybe more, to train that bot properly before they can actually start interacting.
Okay, kind of similar or related, please correct me if I'm wrong, of course, Andy, is the available technologies and the process.
Yeah, so I think probably, the one question asked earlier is about the kind of technologies available. So if you look at what you need to build a chatbot, obviously they needs to be built for a particular channel, which could be Messenger or Alexa or Skype or your website. So there are lots and lots and lots of platforms available, and I think that probably adds to a bit of confusion as well, which is the right technology for you. But That's why we have mentioned that you need to spend time planning and picking the right technology, because with bots, if you are started your journey with the bots, it's difficult to kind of switch to something else. So it's better to spend time planning right. And then obviously building right and continue to optimize. Chatbase, it is an awesome tool for chatbot analytics. It provides you so much insight into what your customers are talking to you about. You should consider part of these components at least when building a chatbot.
So is chat based just for enterprise though? Because I know there are a lot of the small and medium sized type of platforms out there.
Yeah, that's right. While chat base, you need to integrate it into your chatbot, spend some time configuring it. So it's more for enterprise, I will say. But if you're building a small chatbot with like 100 interactions a week, for example, I will suggest just sticking with likes of Bot Engine, FlowX, so they give you enough information.
Awesome, that's very helpful. All right, moving on. Now that we've kind of know a little bit about the abbreviations, what are the applications in business for AI chatbots? Do you have any examples?
I guess if you look around, mostly where conversational AI is being used today is a lot in service desk automation. So if you look at within a large organization, I want to apply for a leave, or I want to check how do I do my expense claim, or how do I reset my password, how do I get access to this particular application. So a lot of those things are being automated. Actually, a lot of bigger enterprises, they are starting with their internal service desk bots first before they go out to their users, because this is a good learning curve for them and they can experience how this whole thing works. Call center employee is a big thing. I personally think this is the area where it will have the biggest impact. When a call comes in, a bot can say, how can I help you, and have a good conversation with the customer. So I think this is the area where, because nobody likes being in call center queues for some time. On the other end, enterprises can't afford to keep scaling the manpower they have. So I think this is where that's going to have the biggest impact. Besides that, in likes of conversational commerce, lead capture is more around selling. I think this is where there is still way to go, because chatbots are not as engaging as a human can be. So this is a growing area, but probably still way to go. And then another one is digital concierge. So this is, if you look at most of the, let's say, hotel chains, they are all experimenting with digital humans who can help guests check in, ask questions like what's around, and basically help them around in a hotel. So these areas are one where we see most of the activity happening.
Awesome. And I do agree with having spent probably half of my career life around call center operations. I do understand. I think that's why my progression towards the years, and it does make sense that I'm into this business as well and around conversations and stuff, is totally agree that it will help around that industry and around that space. Please carry on, Andy. Sorry.
Sure. Now, I just want to, like on the call center specifically, if you look at New Zealand context, Vodafone New Zealand has started a program last year actually, and they are targeting that 60% of the interactions will be handled by virtual agents by, I think, 2021 it is. So that's kind of the numbers we are talking about. Similarly, Spark is another telecommunication service provider in New Zealand, and their CEO had a statement in last year that October 2018, their chatbot IP handled, I think, same workload as 43 employees in a month. So it is huge, and I think this is how it is going to happen, I think, with specific in this area.
Yep, totally agree. So that's a lot of applications for sure. I mean, right now there's a lot of chatter around marketing and lead generation, which you've already mentioned, etc. But this is pretty much the bulk of the interaction. So how chatbots can be very beneficial, especially in the enterprise side of things. So I'll move on to the next question. What are your thoughts on the current state of voice bots? So let's move a little bit to the voice side of things.
Sure, the base itself of voice devices is growing a lot. So, you can walk into a store, electronic store, and pick Alexa, Google Home. So these devices are growing a lot. So
Mm,
there are three things. One is the devices like Alexa and Google Home, which are standalone devices. Then Microsoft's Cortana is something you can use from within Alexa or on your laptop. So you can enable Cortana in your Windows device and interact with it, ask when is my next appointment and all of that. And then on the phone, there are personal assistants available like Siri, Bixby from Samsung, Google Assistant. And then, as I mentioned, in IoT, you can give commands to literally any device around you. So, with that happening, I guess voice is going to be huge, especially in terms of bots, because that's where the development is happening. When all these devices, Siri, Alexas, you're talking to a bot, if you like. So if you build a Alexa skill, this is using the Lex I mentioned. So it is Amazon Lex. So all of these devices are using natural language understanding, a chatbot kind of conversation design to answer your question. So this is going to grow probably even faster than chatbots, because you can see in last 2 years already people are used to using these devices, and probably we don't even realize that we are talking to a bot.
Yep, I'm excited about that. I mean, on a conversational design, again, on the front end side of things, it's now considering, the humor, not even just the humor, but the type of words or the language, the tone, etc. So it doesn't really just sound like it's a robot. Some of the groups that I've been into as well are part of us, and they're starting to find how they can put in some specific cultural nuances, etc., because it is totally different. If you're trying to make a joke, for example, right? And American humor is different from the UK, for example. Okay, now let's move on a little bit towards the highest end. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called the digital humans. Now, this is, as some would say, close to Terminator. I've mentioned that earlier as well, right? And that's just some of the chatter. That's why they're a little bit not so sure about chatbots, because they're a little scary. So what are digital humans? What do I mean, how are they different from the other chatbots, And of course, any examples you could provide, it would be great.
Sure. So I think if you look at like how we interact, we touched base on messaging chatbots, we touched on voice, but the one element which is missing is actually looking at a face, looking at the expressions, and looking at how a person is feeling and responding to you. I think that's the stage three of the chatbots, where you are actually interacting with the person, where you can see their expressions, you can actually feel how they are feeling. So that's where a lot of advancement is happening. Actually, there is a digital human, the first digital human in Saudi Arabia to get a citizenship. I think she is called Sophie. I saw Sophie talking and actually participating in an interview, and she was awesome. She could answer questions with very nice expressions. She answered all the questions from the reporters and the public. You can look at the YouTube video. And then she ended that conversation by asking for investment. So it was an investment forum, and she said, "Hey, look, you have seen how I am today and what are my capabilities. So I'm looking for investment. If anyone needs to, get better." This is stage three, and I think luckily New Zealand is the country where a lot is happening in this space. We have two startups which are growing quickly, who gained a lot of investment. One is called Soul Machines, and another is called FaceMe. So these two organizations, startups in New Zealand, are working just on basically the 3D faces, adding the emotional intelligence and visual and auditory systems. And look, with these ones, they are very separate from actually natural language. This whole subject is about creating the expressions, the face, the image, and then in the background, they also use the natural language engines we spoke about, likes of Louis or Dialogflow, or you can build your own. But the main thing is this expression. And if you look at the use cases around, I'm sure all the countries are the same. All major banks in New Zealand and Australia are coming up with their own digital humans. And now telecommunication service providers have started this journey too. Like Vodafone New Zealand are implementing one. And it's same trend across the globe. So if I see 2 years from now, or maybe a little more, they will come into mainstream. So when you go to a branch, you will be talking to this assistant, or if you are going to, let's say, ASB website, these digital humans will be there talking to you. So I guess this is the next evolution from chatbots, and again, a lot and lot and lot of research is going into this area.
Yep. And I personally had the chance to see Soul Machine's demo and how it works in a few conferences and events, and of course, Face Me as well. It's Soul Machines is a little creepy, but really mind blowing, so to speak,
Yeah.
the technology behind it. I'm also excited about the digital humans and how it interacts and stuff. And of course, I mean, we can't talk about it right now because we don't have enough time, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's Josie from ASB, right? And I know I read a few articles. I mean, of course, it's mixed feedback. Some hate it, some loved it. That's
Yeah.
technology. Just a few more before we end. There is actually another question just around, since we're talking about emotions and digital humans, I think this is the best time to ask this question. It says, what potential is there for recognizing or even responding appropriately to the emotional state of a user, so drive some degree of emotional matching? So this is about matching now, or is this what the digital humans are actually doing right now?
No, that's an awesome question actually. So look, this is a field that is evolving a lot, but I can tell you that how generally this thing is available. So Microsoft Louis, when you pass it a phrase, it actually tells you I'm 90% confident this person is asking for a coffee, and I am also scoring this person out of 100 where they are emotionally. So 100 points means they are extremely happy, and 0 means they are angry or sad. So basically, today, if you use Lois and you have to do one checkbox, it will tell you how this person is emotionally, and then you can respond appropriately. So if you see that score is 10 out of 100, you know person is angry, and then the bot can take a different tone or take them to a different pathway or maybe transfer it to a real person. So this is already happening. And when it comes to digital humans, then digital humans also look at the face expression. So they can also look at your face expressions and then bring that into the picture as well, and again score you even better. So again, scoring is based on what you have written, tone of your voice, and then your face. So if you combine these three things, what you have said, in which tone you have said, and how your face is looking, very accurately you can figure out the emotional state of that person. So yeah, I think we are probably getting there very fast.
Awesome. So exciting stuff. Okay, I have one last question. So, what is the state, Andy, right now here in New Zealand when it comes to AI chatbot, the industry, in terms of developing chatbots? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, look, I can talk about general state of AI in New Zealand. So it's being invested in a lot from all sectors. So as I said, likes of Soul Machines and Face Me are leading in the world actually when it comes to digital humans. So that's happening right in New Zealand. There are also messaging chatbot platforms being developed. One is Embed, another one is Journey, ako.ai, of course, which I represent. We also build a chatbot platform. So there is a lot happening in New Zealand, especially when it comes to enterprise space. I still feel that we don't have enough companies putting effort in kind of small to medium customer range, but there is definitely a lot of activity in enterprise. Even Jam, looking at your organization, Conversologie, who are focusing on just designing a good conversation, giving a good personality to the bot, selecting the right tone. A lot of importance is given to all these elements, and there are organizations doing in technology, conversation design, navigation flows, platforms, research. So yeah, I think we are up there, and will continue to grow.
And it's very, very exciting to be part of it, isn't it, Andy?
It is absolutely.
Definitely. I mean, the team and I are very, very excited about this. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us today. Very, very valuable information for sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
That's it for this episode. Maybe it raised more questions than it answered. Well, we very well may get Andy back to guest again, so please comments, questions, feedback, I'll keep an eye on them. If you're on anchor.fm, you can leave us a voice message. Don't be shy. And if you found us on social or your usual podcast app, drop a comment, join the conversation, or you can visit our page, theconversologist.show, and tell us what you think there. Music Bed, of course, was composed by Carla Vergara, and this podcast was edited together from the original 1-hour webinar by my podcast stooge, first in his own Google search, Rue Shearer. Till the next episode, thanks for listening, and remember to keep the conversation going.